Welcome back to Surviving and Thriving, where we share with you the things that we have learned as we have transitioned our family from struggling to survive disease to thriving right smack dab in the midst of it, in the hopes that something that we share with you will enlighten you and encourage you as you transition your family from struggling to survive disease to thriving right smack dab in the midst of it. Well, we have been doing a series on life lessons from the garden, where we talk about something that I've learned in my gardening experiences and how it applies to us today in life, in all areas of life, because we all go through things in life, but especially when you're fighting and overcoming chronic illness, sickness, disease, right? These lessons help us out a ton. It actually helps us to thrive through what we're going through and not just survive. So, I have not entitled this yet, so I'm not going to tell you what we're going to talk about, although I do know what we're going to talk about because I don't know what I'm going to entitle it yet. So just come with me on this journey, okay? So first, I'm going to tell you a gardening story. And then we're going to go back and apply life lessons to it and how it can apply to our lives and see what we can learn from it together, right? So this particular summer, it was supposed to be extremely hot, okay? And the winter is supposed to be cold and the summer is supposed to be hot, and that was the big talk. So my spring garden was beautiful. Everything was growing well. I started planting the stuff for my summer garden while my spring garden was in full bloom, and it was beautiful. And it was a beautiful spring. And then the weather changed and it got hot, right? And it was super, super hot. Now, before the transition, right at the time when you should be planting all your summer crops, I was talking to people that I know that garden, and I was doing the regular. Hey, how's your garden? Did you get your stuff in the ground? What you growing this year? Regular talk, right? That gardeners love to discuss. And I got a lot of different answers. Some say, you know what, I'm not planting anything this summer. It's supposed to be really hot. I'm not fighting the sun. It's not even worth it. Others were like, yeah, it's supposed to be really hot, so I'm going to do a little bit. Not a lot. I'm just going to try my hand and see what happens. Then there were some like me. I'm going full fledged, full speed ahead. Because, yeah, that's what they say, but only God knows. And even then, summer plants supposed to grow in the summer. Let's do this. And everybody have their own reasonings for gardening. I have a lot of reasons, a ton of reasons as to why I garden, and it can change every season. But I have reasons other than the enjoyment of it, right? And this year, this summer, one of the things that was very important to me was that I didn't like what was being offered in a grocery store. I didn't like the quality of produce, and I didn't like the price of the produce. So I said, well, you know what? This year, I'm going to make sure that I grow what my family eat. At least wipe out certain items, right? To make sure that I'm supplying it. We don't have to purchase it from anywhere else. But I did a lot this summer. And I grew it, and the summer was hot. And even though my plants were looking good and they had came up good, when that heat got really hot, I could see they were struggling. Even stuff like okra was struggling, and eggplant. The peppers, stuff that like heat was like, it's too hot out here for me, right? So I went and I spent all this money, and I bought, because I had a pretty good sized garden, I bought all this shade cloth that lets the sun through, lets the wind through, but drops the temperature by a lot, right? So that I could protect everything. And we're building shelters and doing all kind of stuff to protect the garden. It also meant that I had to get up super, super, super early every morning because it was hot, and you want to water your plants before that sun comes up because you don't really want to burn. And I do a lot in pots too. So I had to get up earlier to beat the sun so that the plants can get rejuvenated with the water before the sun even came up, because it was hot. Like the sun come up and it was burning. It was just hot when the sun came up. It was hot before day. Makes no kind of sense, right? And so it took a lot of work. It took a lot of effort, took a lot of prayer. And I'm working my garden. Everything looks good. It's got shade. It looks good, but it was still hot in the shade that my okra was sweating. Yes, y'all, plants can sweat. It was new for me to have learned that. I didn't know that plants could sweat, but mine was sweating. And it's not sweat how you think it's sweat. It's plants how sweat. It's sweat how plants sweat, right? but they were sweating. And so my plants were looking good. They were growing well, but the buds was falling off. And if you know anything about gardening, it's those flowers that actually turn into your fruit or your vegetables. So you need those flowers, right? And so like my okra, I would get this little nub and then it would fall off. It wouldn't grow into the stalk that I was looking for. And I got, the buds, but they were falling off. And all my eggplant was falling off, but I got an eggplant here and there. Watermelon ended up doing pretty good. The melons were doing good. But a lot of other things were struggling. And I would get a lot of buds, but I wasn't getting a lot of fruit or vegetables. And it was kind of a struggle. And as I would talk throughout the season to different people, they were like, you know what, I just let my garden die off because it's not even worth the fight. I can't win this fight. And I talked to others who were like, I'm watering like I normally water, but it's just too hot. Well, one thing I noticed was that some people weren't changing their strategies. I had to change my strategy, my watering strategy. I had to change a lot of things to adapt to what was going on. So my garden was beautiful. It was lush. I just wasn't getting the amount of produce that I thought that I should get because, well, they weren't producing because it was too hot. And they were doing the plants were doing what they needed to do to survive, which means the buds were falling off. Majority of everything made it, but there were some items that I was growing that just couldn't hack it and couldn't handle it. So I had a lot of loss. And I was constantly replanting to try to keep things up, right? But some things just wasn't making it. So I did have some loss, but I had more that made it than I had loss. So I get I get a cucumber here, something there, but it wasn't the abundance that I was expecting. So we still had to buy groceries from the grocery store, and I didn't like what we were getting. I just didn't like it. And it was irritating and frustrating. And every day I wanted to quit. I told my husband, I'm getting so disappointed. I want to quit. I don't want to do this, but I don't spend too much money. I don't spend too much time because I'm very careful with my husband's money. So if I invest in his money, we're going to hold this down. And my husband kept encouraging me. But when I would get out there and I'd be like, I just want to pull this up. I'm so frustrated. I just want to pull it up and do something else, right? There was this still small voice on the inside that would say, hold on. Keep doing what you're doing. It's going to break. The weather's going to break and you're going to get it. And I would say, well, yeah, but when's it going to break? This is supposed to be just the whole summer. Like the summer ain't going to be here always. It's going to end. And you're going to get what you need as it transitions into a new season. So I kept saying, okay, I'm going to hold on. And I would tell my husband, this is what I keep hearing on the inside. Goes against everything that everybody I know is doing. Goes against even how I feel. I just want to say, forget about it. Sleep in and uproot some stuff and plant something else for another season, right? But I kept hearing that every morning over and over again, that encouragement from the inside. It was encouraging me to keep going, telling me a harvest is still to come, even though it went against everything that I thought or that I was feeling, even though it went against everything everyone I knew was doing. And I got to tell you, I would get so discouraged. And then there was times I was in some struggles and I couldn't get up and go out there. But my children, particularly one daughter, would make sure that the garden kept going for me when I physically wasn't able to get up and go do it. And sometimes it would be a couple weeks at a time. And she kept it going. And then when I could get up, I get back out there. It'd be a lot of work, but I get out there and I do what I needed to do. Well, guess what? The weather broke. And the degrees started going down just a little bit. But all it needed to do was go down a couple of degrees for that thing to give the plants what they needed, the break that they needed. And when it went down just a couple degrees, you guys, I'm not talking about no big jump. I'm talking about just a couple degrees it went down. The okra started producing. The eggplants started growing, right? My tomato trees just vines, tomatoes everywhere. And it was exciting. Every day is exciting to go out and harvest. Now, when this started happening, I already started planning stuff for the fall, right? So I'm planning stuff for the fall. The fall stuff is starting to come up and I'm excited about that. But I'm getting a full bounty of my summer stuff. And it's exciting every day to be bringing in just everything. I'm bringing in cherries. I'm bringing in all kinds of stuff and figs. And it's just exciting, right? Well, I'm getting a harvest. And people that I'm talking to are like, how are you getting a harvest? How did you do it? Wasn't it too hard? They gave up on their gardens. And I'm getting something, but no one else that I know is really getting what I'm getting. So let's talk about this. How does this apply to our life? Take a sip of my hot chocolate here. I'm sorry. I like hot chocolate, especially because this particular collagen I'm taking has a weird taste to it. And I can mask it a little bit better in my hot chocolate. So let's talk about this and how does it apply to life. Well, there's a few things in this. Number one, you have to do what's best for you. According to your knowledge, according to that inner voice, you have to do what's best for you, right? And whatever decision you make, somebody's going to have something to say and going to criticize you because you're doing it. Those who chose not to garden made the decision that they felt that was best for them. Those who chose to do a little bit, those who, like me, chose to go all in. Everybody had to do what was best for them, for their reasonings, for their purpose, right? So you have to make a decision on what's best for you in any given season. Even with the predictions of what is to come, you still have to do what's best for you. And no matter what decision you make, somebody gonna have something to say. People were critical of those who chose not to garden, those who chose to do a little bit, and people were critical of me for going all in. Some people chose to go in and decided that it was too much, and they decided it was the fold. There is nothing wrong with that. Sometimes you got to know when you got in too far and it's time for you to fold and it's time for you to let it go. And people will talk about you because you'll let stuff go. But that's okay, because it takes a big, mature, grown person to be able to say, you know what, I made a mistake, and back up. So how does that apply to us? Well, in the decisions that we make in our health, sometimes it applies in other things like, you know what, I'm in over my head. I love this house. I like this house, but I'm going to have to let it go. You got to know when to hold them. Remember the saying, know when to fold them. Know when to walk away and know when to run. There's nothing to be ashamed in that. That's called maturity. And it's called discipline, whether you know it or not, right? So you got to know what's best for you. But people did talk about those who just said, you know what, I'm in too deep, I'm going to let the garden die. And there's people who talked about me because I let it go all the way to the end and I stuck in there and I hung in there. And I got questioned a lot. How are you doing it in this in this heat? How are you still maintaining a garden in this type of heat? Because I did this, I did that, mine's dried up. There was nothing I could do about it. And what I found out is I invested where other people didn't invest. I changed my strategies where other people kept the same strategy and didn't realize that the situation and circumstances change, which means your strategy has got to change. You can't do something that worked in the old season in a new season. You got to adjust to the season in which you're in. And every season you can have, summer is not going to be the same every year of your life. Winter is not, there's some warmer winter and some colder winters. There's some freak storm winters, right? So winter isn't, just because it's labeled something doesn't mean it's going to be that way all the time. And so you have to adjust in the season that you're in. You got to have a now season mentality, not a last year season, a 10-year season ago mentality. You got to have I got a now season mentality, meaning I got to have a strategy for now. It doesn't matter what happened all those other years. I can refer back to them, right, to get a gauge, right, or to gain wisdom from it. But I can't live in the old seasons. I got to live in a now season mentality. So I have to have a strategy for now. I got to have a strategy for today. So people were still watering at the same time. When that heat is like that, you got to adjust your watering time. Because you don't want that heat burning up your roots. You don't want, when you watering it at certain times of day, it's a lot of things you got to adjust. So some people weren't willing to get up before day. to make sure that they can water and their plants have enough time to really utilize that water before the heat comes. You have to make those adjustments. Some people weren't willing to invest in all them shade cloths because they were not cheap. And then even when I bought the shade cloth, I had to create the apparatuses to put them up, right? To go along with my flow. And I actually had to rearrange some things. I have a lot of things that are in pots. I had to rearrange some things to make some stuff work. And a lot of people didn't have the time or whatever it is to be able to do that. So you have to be able to adjust and strategize. You got to be agile, mobile, right? In every season of your life, because things come at you. And when things come at you, you got to know how to call an audible. You got to know how to be able to see what's going on, football analysis, right? With the defense, and be able to say, you know what, this offense we call ain't going to work with this defense. I see a weakness in this defense. You know what? Let's change while we on the line. We ain't got a chance to huddle no more, but we can change at the last minute. You got to be able to pivot, right? But even more than that, what I learned was this. Was everything in me wanted to rip some stuff out sometimes. Everything in me wanted to just break down and cry sometimes and say it's not worth it. It was such a disappointment because I wanted so bad to be able to supply all the vegetables for my family this summer, and it didn't work out that way. It did with the melons, but on some other things it didn't. And my herbs did good, most of them. And I didn't get that. I was highly disappointed and I was upset as a wife because I felt like I used my husband's money and I didn't get what I wanted to get off of it. I didn't even think about the future uses of the stuff. I just thought about the now use. I needed it now. I wanted it now. But when everything broke and that harvest started coming in, do you know what it did to me when my husband came and said, I ain't buying that no more. We got enough of that. It's coming in abundance. I won't be buying this right now. I won't be buying that. You know what? Tomatoes, I ain't buying no more tomatoes. It made me so happy to hear him make the announcements. You know, that was just awesome because that's what I wanted all summer long. And now I have it in abundance, right? So what is the lesson in that? Is that sometimes everything that you see, everything that you know will go against that little small, still voice inside. You have got to learn how to listen to that small voice that's telling you yes, when everything you see and everything you feel and everything you know is telling you no. Because that little small voice I've learned in my life, that's the Holy Spirit. And when I listen to that voice, I'm telling you right now, even though it goes against everything, even though it's hard, even though it's taxing me, even though it's hurting me, even though it's frustrating me, but when I listen to that voice and I still keep following that voice, I always get a harvest in the end. I always come out on top in the end. And right now it's fun watching my kids come in or go out in the morning with baskets and come in and be like, Mama, look what we got. It is a joy to go out and harvest. It's a joy to tell my children, why don't y'all go out there and collect this morning? And they always miss, and I go back out behind them and collect even more. It is awesome to see that and to be able to bring in when nobody else is bringing in. Here's another thing you need to see in that. Never judge somebody else's harvest because you don't know what it costs them to get it. You don't know the suffering and what they're going through when they get it. So don't be jealous of what somebody else has. Enjoy what you got. But if you don't get anything out of this, what I want you to really to get is you got to listen to that inner small voice. You got to know Jesus. You got to have a relationship with his word because he will tell you and show you the way for you to go. Time and time again in my life, that have been true, where I've had to stand against doctors. I've had to stand against peers. I had to stand against loved ones because there was something down on the inside of me telling me something opposite of what I thought, what I felt, what everything was saying, what the statistics say, what the lab work say, everything. But I stood. And in the end, I always came out on top. Time and time again, when they said, if you don't do this, you're going to die. You got 4 hours. You got 4 days max. I was told all kinds of stuff to live. But I stood on what I was hearing, and I'm here today, year after year after year. Everyone else may look at you like you crazy. Everybody else may talk about you and talk about you bad, right? But I would much rather go out on that small voice, right, than to try to go with the crowd and make a decision that could cost me my life. And you cannot make your decisions based upon somebody else, because what's right for them may not be right for you. It was right for some people not to plant. It was right for some people to say, I'm going to let it fold. It wasn't right for me. Do you know why it wasn't right for me? Because that small voice kept saying, no, you have something on the other side. And now I'm getting what's on the other side. So, hope something in there was helpful for you. Remember, in all things, at all times, do you, be you. Stand. Go against the grain. Go with the grain. Whatever it is that the Lord is telling you to do, that is where your victory lies. That is where your provision and your prosperity is. That is where your life is. Stick with life. Love ya. Till next time. Bye.